She trusted him with everything. Her locker code, her coffee breaks, even the quiet parts of her heart. He was just the janitor, quiet and observant, but he always showed up at the right moments, said the right things. Until one rainy night, Rachel found him alone in the records room, his hands moving fast over a hospital computer. The screen displayed sealed files, files linked to the mysterious death of a young nurse. Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "You lied to me. You were never just a janitor." He looked up, caught, guilt etched across his face. "No," he said, stepping forward, "but I swear, everything I felt for you was real." What he said next changed everything. The storm had a way of swallowing sound, of muffling even the sharpest city noise, until it became nothing but a hushed drumbeat of rain against pavement. Outside St. Vincent's General, the wind whipped down the empty alleyway, bending trees and flinging sheets of water against the emergency bay windows. It was on such a night that Rachel Monroe, a nurse known more for her heart than her title, paused at the rear staff entrance on her way in. She had worked the night shift long enough to recognize exhaustion, but what she saw wasn't just fatigue, it was despair. A man sat hunched beneath the narrow overhang of the awning, his jacket soaked through, the sleeves clinging to arms that trembled violently. His face was mostly hidden beneath a dark beanie, and he barely reacted as the automatic doors hissed open behind her. Rachel stood there for a heartbeat, unsure. Protocol said to call security. Her gut said something else. "Sir, it's freezing out here," she said gently, stepping closer, her voice barely above the wind. "Let me take you inside." "No," the man rasped. "I just need to rest." His words were slurred, his head low, and every syllable looked like it cost him a piece of himself. But Rachel didn't flinch. Instead, she crouched beside him, her blue scrubs already damp at the knees. "You'll get pneumonia," she said. "I'm not asking for your story. I just don't want you dying out here." He didn't answer, but she could feel the indecision in his body, so she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. He tensed, then nodded faintly. 5 minutes later, she was leading him through the hospital's staff hallway, past flickering fluorescent lights and half-asleep orderlies. No one questioned her. Rachel had that kind of presence, soft but certain. She guided him to an unused on-call room, tucked between the janitorial supply closet and a forgotten vending machine. She brought him a towel, a dry set of scrubs, and a styrofoam cup of lukewarm break room tea. "You can rest here tonight," she said, arranging a spare pillow on the cot. "I'll speak to admin tomorrow. Maybe they can offer a temporary janitor position. It's not much, but it's warm. And it's honest." The man looked at her for the first time. His eyes, sharp, intelligent, haunted, met hers. "Thank you," he murmured, glancing at her badge. "Rachel." She offered a soft smile. "You're welcome. What's your name?" A pause. "Eli." "Well, Eli," she said, walking toward the door. "Try to rest. You're safe now." But as she glanced back, she noticed the way he sat, upright, alert, not the posture of someone broken by life. Something about him didn't add up. Not yet dangerous, but not quite harmless either. Still, she turned out the light and left him there, alone. In that quiet room between the hum of storm winds and the hum of hospital life, two strangers crossed paths, and nothing would be the same again. The next morning, Eli Carter showed up at the hospital dressed in clean scrubs and holding a mop bucket, his hair still damp from a quick shower in the staff locker room. To anyone passing by, he was just the new guy, another quiet janitor in an endless cycle of faces. But beneath that worn uniform and calm demeanor, he was someone entirely different. He was a Carter. Not that anyone at St. Vincent's would have guessed. The Carter family name, stamped across pharmaceutical patents and medical research journals, evoked prestige and power. Eli had grown up in boardrooms, not broom closets. His father was a CEO, his grandfather a legend in biotech. But the shine of the Carter legacy had dulled for Eli the moment he watched his own mother fade under the very system their empire fed. They had promised her the best. What she got were side effects, lies, and silence. Eli hadn't just turned away from his inheritance, he'd vanished from it. For 3 years, he had worked undercover with a private agency dedicated to exposing medical corruption. No press, no glory, just evidence. just truth. St. Vincent's was his latest case. A grieving mother named Isabel Navarro had reached out through unofficial channels. Her daughter Camilla had been a young nurse, full of life until a routine post-op medication caused her sudden decline. The hospital listed it as unexpected complications. Isabel believed it was something darker. Eli had seen enough cover-ups to recognize the signs: missing lot numbers, incomplete records, falsified inventories. Camilla had been another statistic to the system, but to Isabel, she was everything. And so Eli came to St. Vincent's as Tom Hayes, janitor. He didn't draw attention to himself. He mopped floors, emptied trash, stayed quiet. But he saw everything. He noticed when the delivery trucks arrived after hours and signed in through the back. He memorized which nurses handled medications and when logs were altered. He watched Dr. Vernon Blake, the hospital director, swipe his key card into the restricted pharmacy wing with clockwork precision, only to leave 10 minutes later with nothing visibly in hand. Eli took notes, photographed shipment labels with a pen camera, hid files in encrypted folders inside a disguised spray bottle. And yet, amid all this calculated infiltration, something unexpected happened. Rachel. She wasn't just kind. She was observant, meticulous in her own way. Like how she remembered which elderly patient liked 2 sugars in his tea or which child needed the elephant stickers after injections. She didn't just work here. She carried the place emotionally. Her presence made even the burnout staff soften. Eli tried to keep his distance. She made that impossible. At first it was simple things, her offering him a granola bar on break or laughing when he nearly fell asleep against a supply cart. But then she started noticing the way he moved. "You're awfully coordinated for someone new to this," she said one afternoon, watching him mop in precise, straight lines. He shrugged. "I learn fast." She raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe you've done this before, in another life." That made him pause. He tried to play it off, but Rachel's curiosity grew. She once caught him staring at the hospital's evacuation map a bit too long. Another time, she noticed his hands, calloused, but with nails clipped short and clean. Not what she'd expect from someone who claimed to have been on the streets. There was also the time he mentioned a medical term, batch traceability, with too much ease. She tilted her head. "You're smarter than you let on, Eli." He met her gaze with a flicker of something, regret, fear. She didn't press, but she remembered. Still, Rachel trusted him. She showed him shortcuts to avoid security cameras, let him borrow her locker when his got jammed, and once, without even thinking, handed him her staff badge when he needed to access the break room fridge. And Eli felt something crack inside his armor every time. He had trained to resist attachment, but Rachel wasn't a statistic. She was warmth in human form. She saw through his silences, treated him with dignity he didn't deserve, and every time she smiled at him, it left a mark. The mission was clear: collect evidence, expose the system, leave quietly. But what if leaving meant breaking her trust? What if staying meant losing his cover? Eli had infiltrated hospitals before, but this was the first time he questioned which life was real, the one on paper, or the one forming with every quiet moment beside Rachel Monroe. And soon he knew he would have to choose. It was one of those nights when even the hospital seemed to hold its breath. The corridors had gone quiet, the usual hum of machines reduced to a soft mechanical whisper. Most of the staff had either gone home or buried themselves in paperwork, and the only sounds that broke the silence were the low rumble of thunder and the occasional squeak of wet soles on tile. Rachel Monroe was on her way back to the break room when she noticed a faint glow coming from the records office down the hall. That room was supposed to be locked. Access was restricted after 8 p.m., and only department heads had clearance. Her brows knit together. She approached quietly, her footsteps muffled by the aged linoleum. Through the glass panel in the door, she saw a figure inside, back hunched over a glowing computer screen, fingers moving with practiced speed. It was Eli. For a moment, her mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe he was helping a doctor. Maybe he was fixing something. Maybe... No. Her breath caught. On the screen was a patient record. Archived, red flagged. The last name on it hit her like a jolt. Navarro. Rachel remembered it vividly. Isabel Navarro, the mother who had collapsed in the ER waiting room months ago, clutching a photo of her daughter Camilla, a nurse who had died unexpectedly. The hospital had brushed it off as a complication, but Isabel had whispered a different truth. Now here it was. Proof. Rachel didn't knock. She stepped into the room, voice trembling but steady. "You lied to me." Eli flinched. The screen went black with a swift keystroke, but the damage was done. His face twisted, not in anger but guilt. Deep, undeniable guilt. "I can explain," he said, stepping forward, her arms crossed. The weight of months, shared breaks, inside jokes, quiet trust pressed down on her chest like lead. "Explain? You lived with us. You worked beside us. You looked me in the eye, Eli. And all that time, what? You were using me." He sighed, the truth finally crashing into the open. "I work for a private agency. We investigate medical corruption. Your hospital is distributing counterfeit drugs. Camilla Navarro's death wasn't an accident. It was covered up. I've been tracking the flow, and it leads back to Dr. Vernon Blake." Rachel's jaw tightened. "So you pretended to be homeless? To be one of us?" "No," he said quickly, desperation flickering in his voice. "Not everything was a lie. The person I was with you, that was real. I didn't plan on caring for you. I didn't plan on this." She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. "Don't say that." "I mean it," he whispered. "From the moment you brought me in from the rain, you became the one part of this job I didn't want to manipulate." Her hands trembled. "You used my kindness, Eli, and now I don't even know who you are." Silence filled the space between them like a canyon. "I regret it every day," he said, eyes shining. "But I couldn't tell you. If the wrong people found out, the investigation would be dead. The records would disappear. The lies would keep killing people." Rachel turned away, her voice cracking. "You could have trusted me." She walked out before he could say another word, her shoes echoing sharply on the tile floor. She pushed through the exit doors and into the night, the storm swallowing her whole. The rain came down in cold, punishing sheets, but it didn't compare to what she felt inside. Behind her, Eli stood frozen in the records room, drenched not by the storm, but by the ache of watching the one person who had saved him walk away. The rain hadn't let up, but Eli didn't care. He ran across the empty courtyard, soaked to the bone, heart pounding louder than the thunder overhead. And then he saw her, standing alone at the bus stop, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her scrubs clinging to her skin, hair plastered to her cheeks. Rachel Monroe looked like she was holding the entire weight of betrayal in her shoulders. "Rachel!" he called, slipping on the slick pavement as he skidded to a stop a few feet away. She didn't move. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. But she didn't walk away either. "I had to find you," Eli said, breathless. "Not for the mission, for you." "You've said enough," she replied, her voice brittle. "No," he said, stepping forward, water dripping from his face. "I haven't. Not the things that matter." She turned slightly, arms still crossed. "Then say them. But don't expect me to believe any of it." Eli's voice cracked. "I never meant to fall for you, but I did. And when I realized that, I hated myself for lying to the one person who actually saw me. You pulled me in from the storm, not knowing who I was. You gave me shelter. You gave me hope." Rachel's eyes flickered, and in that flicker, just a fraction of a heartbeat, was something more than anger. It was the part of her still searching for truth. "Help me finish this," he said. "Help me bring them down." She hesitated, then finally nodded. "Then we do it together, but no more lies." From that moment, everything changed. They met in secret. They planned with precision. Eli used his covert skills to hack into the hospital's internal servers, while Rachel, with her clearance, accessed the physical records. She swiped them into restricted areas between patient rounds, and together they combed through thousands of lines of corrupted data. They found drug inventory mismatches, purchase orders from third-party suppliers with false addresses, lot numbers tied to medications that had never passed FDA testing. But the real shock came in the form of a digital trail. Documents signed off by Dr. Vernon Blake himself. Emails, authorizations, a shell company in the Caymans. All roads led to him. The deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. One night, after Rachel exited the records room with a stack of redacted files, she found Blake waiting by her locker. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He smiled. "Miss Monroe," he said coolly, "we both know this job isn't your endgame. You're smart, ambitious. So let's stop pretending." Rachel stood frozen. "I'm offering you a clean way out," he continued, slipping a plain envelope into her hand. "Take a vacation, say nothing. Come back, and you'll still have your license, your job, a nice raise, maybe even a promotion." Her hand shook as she looked down at the envelope. Thick, heavy. Then she looked up, and Blake's smirk faltered. "I'm not for sale," she said. "Not now. Not ever." She dropped the envelope in the trash as she walked away. That night she met Eli in the supply closet. "He tried to buy me off," she whispered. "That means we're close. Too close." "We need to move fast," Eli replied. "Once he realizes we're not backing down, he'll bury everything." Rachel pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "Too late. I sent it already. An investigative journalist is waiting. All we have to do is press send." Eli stared at her, equal parts awe and fear. "You're incredible." "I'm furious," she said, "and I'm done being quiet." They hit send together. And just like that, the silence that had haunted the halls of St. Vincent's cracked open, making way for a storm far greater than either of them had ever imagined. By morning, Rachel Monroe was summoned to the HR office. Her badge was deactivated, her locker emptied, no explanations, no formal charges. Just a cold, sterile escort out of the hospital where she'd poured her soul into every shift. Eli Carter didn't fare any better. Security pulled him aside before he could finish mopping the East Wing. They knew his name wasn't Tom Hayes. They knew enough to file for identity fraud. But as they were shown the door, humiliated, jobless, and exhausted, they didn't hang their heads. Because 30 minutes later, the story went public. The first headline hit local news. "Hospital director linked to counterfeit drug ring." By noon, national networks picked it up. Within hours, Eli was seated across from a major anchor on a live broadcast. The studio lights harsh, the questions relentless. He didn't flinch. "This wasn't a clerical mistake," Eli said. "It was a system built to profit off silence. Fake medications were passed off as legitimate treatments. Patients paid the price. Some never woke up." He handed over flash drives, encrypted files, purchase logs, shipment trails, emails between hospital administrators and executives from a shell pharmaceutical company registered offshore. Every document a nail in the coffin. Reporters swarmed St. Vincent's. Protesters gathered outside. Former employees came forward with matching stories. Suspicious shipments, forced silence, altered patient charts. And then came the families. Grieving parents, siblings, widows. They held up photos of loved ones who had died after being treated with the same faulty drugs Camilla Navarro had taken. The loss that had once seemed isolated was now revealed to be part of something much larger and much darker. In the middle of the chaos, Rachel stood at the courthouse, summoned to testify. Her blue scrubs replaced with a gray blazer, her hands folded tightly as she approached the stand. "I remember the night Mrs. Navarro came in," she began, voice steady but laced with memory. "She sat in the hallway for hours. She didn't scream. She didn't yell. She just broke." The courtroom went still. "I told myself it was just a tragedy," Rachel continued, "that we did everything we could. But we didn't. We accepted what we were told. And now I know. Someone could have stopped it sooner." Her voice faltered, but she didn't look away from the jury. "I should have asked more questions. But now, I won't stop until the truth is known." Across the room, Dr. Vernon Blake sat stone-faced, his once polished confidence unraveling thread by thread. The prosecution laid out the damning evidence. Falsified invoices, backdoor deals, hush payments, altered records. The jury didn't need long. Guilty, 15 years in federal prison, fraud, conspiracy, reckless endangerment. His co-conspirators, senior administrators, pharmaceutical middlemen, were arrested soon after. The company that had supplied the counterfeit meds was dissolved, its assets seized by the government. But it wasn't just a legal victory, It was a human one. In the quiet outside the courthouse, as camera crews packed up and the crowd began to thin, Isabel Navarro approached Rachel and Eli. Her eyes glistened as she reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a creased photo of her daughter. "She can rest now," Isabel whispered, holding the photo tightly, "because someone cared enough to speak." Rachel hugged her, tears spilling freely. "We never stopped caring," she said softly, "and we never will." Eli placed a hand on Isabel's shoulder, nodding. "It wasn't just about exposing the crime," he said. "It was about honoring the lives it stole." For the first time since that rainy night, Rachel and Eli stood side by side, not in secrecy, but in strength. They had lost everything and gained something far more powerful: the truth, and the knowledge that even in a world built on silence, a single voice, joined by another, could echo loud enough to bring it all crashing down. 1 year later, the street that once echoed with silence and shuttered businesses now rang with laughter and the shuffle of footsteps. Oak Ridge Avenue had come alive again, and at its heart stood a brand new clinic. The sign above its glass doors read, "Rachel's Haven, a place for honest healing." Built with funds from the class action lawsuit and generous donations from across the country, the clinic had become more than a healthcare center. It was a promise, a symbol that transparency, dignity, and compassion could coexist in a system that too often forgot them. Inside, families waited for their turn, some for checkups, others for emotional support. No one was turned away. No bills were hidden in small print. Every patient was met with the same thing Rachel Monroe had offered since the beginning: eye contact, empathy, and the belief that healing was a human right. That morning, under a soft drizzle that mirrored the night she had first met him, Eli Carter stood quietly by the courtyard. Dressed in a tailored navy coat, he watched the celebration unfold. Volunteers passed out blankets. Retired nurses shared hugs. A group of local musicians played softly in the background. When Rachel stepped out to greet the crowd, she looked radiant. Her hair was pulled back in a bun, her white coat pressed, and her name tag now read, Director of Care. She waved and smiled, unaware of the moment Eli had been planning for weeks. Then he walked to the podium, cleared his throat, and spoke. "I wasn't just saved by medicine," he said, his voice steady. "I was saved by a woman who believed in me when I had forgotten how to believe in myself." He stepped down, approached her slowly, and knelt, pulling out a small velvet box. "Rachel Monroe," he said, eyes locked on hers, "you pulled me out of the storm. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes and the world seemed to pause. She whispered, "Yes." And in that moment, beneath the soft rain and surrounded by people whose lives they had touched, their love, once built on secrets, became something radiant, enduring, and true. In the quiet aftermath of their storm, Rachel and Eli remind us of a truth that transcends romance or scandal. Redemption is possible, even after betrayal, and healing often begins with the courage to care. In today's world where healthcare can feel like a maze of costs and codes, Rachel's Haven stands as a symbol of what compassionate care should look like. It challenges us to ask, what if we valued honesty more than profit? What if we listened to patients before reading their charts? For older generations, this story may echo familiar struggles: the loss of trust in institutions, the grief of losing someone too soon, or the hope of second chances. For younger ones, it's a reminder that integrity and love still have a place, even in systems built on silence. But here's the real question for all of us. Would you have forgiven Eli if you were Rachel? Can love survive deception when the truth behind it is noble? What does it mean to truly see someone in a world full of roles, uniforms, and assumptions? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Share your experience, your wisdom, or just a moment in your life when kindness changed everything. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in hope, truth, and the quiet power of doing the right thing, even when no one's watching. Thank you for spending time with Warm Soul Stories, where real emotions meet real lessons. Until next time, keep your light on and never stop believing that one act of compassion can change everything.